answer the same question?
I think that it's some of the things that we already talked about and touched on. And one of them is, you know, not to be afraid of hiring smart people. I think a lot of times you feel as you go up the leadership ladder that you have to be the first one in the room. And that's not necessarily the case. You're there to lead the team. And excuse my dog who's here, who's making noises in the background. She just sneezed. I think that, you know, you're there to lead the team, and that's something for you to remember. And that's the important part as you go into a leadership role. The importance is the team that you're leading and what that team can accomplish and how they work well with others. I mean, and how they understand where they fit in with the rest of the company, and providing that mentorship for that group as well.
And I think that adage of always raising people up who do things well and highlighting them, and then taking responsibility when things go wrong. So,
right.
You know, my job is to follow my sword all the time for things that go wrong around here, but everybody who's under me gets the credit for anything that goes right.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. When we reach, you know, when we get that uptime all continuously, it's not because of me. It's because of the people that work for me that are on my team. If we don't reach that uptime, then it's my fault. Same thing. And going back to John, I remember like years ago sitting on the Mass Health Data Consortium CIO forum with John, and it was such a pleasure to have him there. And he always would have something humorous, but I think the funniest thing that I still remember him for, and I quote him sometimes in my classes when going over the Gartner charts, and he's saying that, you know, this is sort of like raising a child. You know, you have the peak of expectations, the trough of disillusionment when you're in those teenage years, and then they come out okay.
Mary, even though you just answered the same question, but let me ask, in this world of working remotely, how do you keep your teams functioned and working, keeping them motivated?
I think the big thing is communication, where I think before you could walk around a floor and talk to people and you wouldn't have to have formal meetings, I think, every day because you had an opportunity to see your direct reports. I think at this point, it's ensuring that you do touch base with people. You do have like a 15-minute stand-up every day where you get your team in there and get them at least to talk about what's happening, what their concerns are, because we're in this time where you have to look at a little bit of people's personal lives. You know, it's not something that we normally do, but there has to be, as leaders, you have to have some empathy for people's personal lives now. And that does a lot for team building too, because then you know that you care and you understand. And even though before I said, you know, you want to go above and beyond, there are times where you're going above and beyond because somebody else is in a crisis. And so you want to make sure that you are there. And I think you guys can't hear me. I don't know.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay.
We can hear you.
So I think that just ensuring that you're in touch, you know what's happening, and communicating about what's happening in the organization as well, like once a week. One of the things we're doing at HealthX that Todd, the CEO, does is we have weekly team, like all staff meetings now, where we go through for half an hour what's happening at the organization.
Yeah, and I assume, Scott, you would echo some of that. Is there anything different or unique that you were all doing to keep your teams motivated?
Well, just to some of the points we've been making, I think you really need to trust your people, right, to make the right choices. And there was a question I don't think we covered in the other session about, you know, why do people work for not-for-profits and work? If you're working for a not-for-profit, working really hard and not getting paid as much as in the for-profit world, you're motivated, right? And I have never worried too much about people slacking off. You know, that figures itself out. So trusting people and letting them to I think Mary's point about the personal life, especially in this time, is really important.
Excellent. Thanks. Yeah, and that actually is a segue into the next question, Scott, that I'll let you take the lead on. Is exactly that. Is what is it that you like most about working for provider pay organization or provider organization in your case?
Yeah, I mean, I went to BU for the healthcare MBA. I got an internship with Partners in between the 2 years, and I never left until a couple of years ago. It was partly just I wasn't in a position with a young family to want to move anywhere. It was a stable job that I had opportunity to grow, and I was really passionate about the mission that Mass General Brigham served there in Boston, and I think that's true of all healthcare providers. And you know, coming down here and doing this, it's very similar organizations where I really believe that what we're doing with technology is critical to enabling clinicians who are taking care of the patients, and you know, it's been a life mission.
Perfect. Mary, how about on your side? I know you've worked for both, but payers, what's kept you there? What do you like most about it?
The thing is, on the payer side, there are nonprofits as well, and that's who I have worked for. And it's my preference because, as Scott said, they're passionate about, it's a different part of the healthcare continuum. And you still have that same mindset that I think you have in the provider side, because generally the organizations that I've worked for are high touch organizations, even though they're payers. And so it's just that passion for what you want to do. And sometimes I was lucky enough to find one time when I worked for a for-profit that carried over into that organization as well. But I think the big thing is the mission. And when talking to people and interviewing people, that's one thing that I try to find out too, is like, how vested are they in the mission of improving healthcare for individuals and the population that you're serving.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I want to actually pause for one moment. I have certainly a number of other questions. I'd love to see if anyone has a question, either if you've added it to the chat, or if not, certainly would love you to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
Yeah, we don't have anything in the chat box right now, but yeah, definitely open up your line if you want to ask any questions.
I'd like to just add onto some of what Mary said about not being afraid to hire people smarter than yourself. One of the best pieces of advice I got from a leader once was hire someone you can see as your replacement. And you know, that's a scary thing to some people, but it was a great piece of advice that I've never forgotten, that, you know, if you want the people to be great at and enjoy what they're doing, but you also don't want to be afraid of hiring someone that can replace you.
That's a great point.
Great comment.
And remember that if you really want to advance, if you groom that person to replace you,
Right.
then
Yes.
the organization can spare you from where you are and put you into something else.
Exactly.
That's a great point.
Great point.
Yeah.
And thank you, Ron. That's excellent.
Yeah, thanks, Ron.
All right, let me throw another one over the fence here. How about Mary? With the rapid changes occurring in healthcare, how do you think the healthcare delivery and hence healthcare IT will need to adapt?
I think they have to realize that it's rapidly happening. You know, one of the things that when you look at healthcare, thank you, Scully, for your comments. One of the things when you look at healthcare, you know, if you look at, what was it, 17 years to get a new therapy, you know, into the clinical guidelines, it's like, we've got to move faster on some of these things, especially on the IT side. And we have to look out there outside of the industry, I think, too, to see what's happening and what people are used to, and especially when you're dealing with patients. You know, patients are used to a certain level of service. There are things that are technology is ubiquitous now. So how do we bring that into our environment in terms of delivery of healthcare? There are a lot of startups out there, a lot of people with really good ideas. And I think it's, as leaders in healthcare, one of the things that we want to make sure we look at is what are, you know, give those people some time, you know, hear what they have to say, see what they're bringing to the table. Because you have to keep an open mind at this point too. Because it may not be, I think if you look at technology with the blinders on of, you know, how long is it going to take you to implement? How are you going to roll this out? This is going to be next to impossible. You're not going to, you know, be able to take some new technology in there.
Do you want to add on to that, or we certainly have some other questions?
Yeah, I was just thinking, you know, for those of you who have either worked for, interacted, or been a patient at Mass General Brigham, you know, for all of the fighting and everything over the 20 plus years, before I left, I was able to get care in an organization that actually did have your registration. You know, wherever you went to Spalding or Newton Wellesley or wherever, they actually had your stuff. It was like, yes, you finally have this stuff. And the clinical care was always good. And so somehow they pulled themselves together and did the process redesign and applied Epic, and it worked. And then I moved here, and you know, I know this is being recorded with the caveat that you know, we're on a journey here. You know, I'm very, I've had several clinical interactions at MedStar, and I think we have really good clinical care. We're also really good at getting paid, which is important, but it can be annoying to a patient, especially when you get asked the same questions over and over and over again. And so I think that there is, I mean, look, we have to have privacy and security. That's really important, and we have to get paid. And we got to have clinical quality, but we have to, and not just IT people, but we have to transform this industry in people, process, and technology. We've got an opportunity to digitize things. So one silver lining from the COVID crisis is, you know, we were very successful at telehealth, not just here and there, but everywhere across the country and world. And so being able to revolutionize the patient experience using technology, still getting paid for it, keeping things secure, keeping clinical quality up. There's an enormous opportunity to capitalize on that right now.
Yeah, I think there are, so that is one of the you know, the golden moments I think of COVID is the telehealth and technology side, you know, working remotely, you know, all of this, you know, being able to take care of patients in the current state that we're in. You know, it's you know, we have these tools, we had these tools. It's just getting them out there and getting them used.
And if I can just comment on the other side of that coin. So one of the main complaints, right, about the American healthcare system is it's too expensive. It's too expensive and too inefficient. And so one of the things we're going to have to deal with, which is not easy for us big employers, is if we're going to do telehealth, then we should have smaller physical sites, right?
Yeah.
Less cost, fewer people. That's going to mean less jobs, right? That everybody knows that the hospital is the biggest employer in any given, you know, town or whatever. So that's a reality, and that's for all of Americans screaming about the cost of healthcare. We're a huge employer, And if we're going to do this, we're going to have fewer employees, less cost.
Yeah.
That's an
It
excellent
will
point.
be, it's going to be a different world.
Sort of on that different world, remote world, more of a career advancement or career question. Scott, I'll start with you. Is as a hiring manager, and I'm not sure how much you've had to deal with in the last 4 or 5 months, but how has or would your interview practices potentially change in the remote world we live in today?
In terms of hiring practices?
Yes, as a hiring manager and hiring staff.
Yeah, I think we've covered some of that ground in the Zoom call so far, but I think there's going to be an opportunity to use talent from around the world. Healthcare has been very local, and people have been, a lot of healthcare providers want to have their people here and all that. I think that there is a great opportunity to take advantage of valuable talent. I could now have people in Boston, working here, and it's just become so much more acceptable in the last 3 months, right? I think that's a great opportunity.
And Mary, anything on from your perspective of having to actually have any interviews remotely during this time?
Can you just repeat that, because you cut out for me?
Oh, sorry. So the question really was, as a hiring manager, someone that'd be looking to hire staff in this remote world that we're living in, how has your interview practices changed, or are you looking for anything specifically with the interviewee now that we're in a remote type of work environment?
I think right now, I am actually trying to hire. I'm working at HealthX, which is the Health Information Exchange in New York. And the thing that we're finding when we're looking for people is that people are afraid. They're afraid to lose their job, the current job that they have. So to try to entice them to come to you when you find a good candidate is very difficult. And so what we've sort of been escalating and using our HR resources more to coach us on how we should be talking and to the candidates that we would like to see, so that we can get them and say, why don't you come over here and join us, and be able to get them away from that safe, cozy spot that they have right now to something that's new that they don't know, and to take that big step and that big change right now. It's tough. But our HR partners have been very good in doing some coaching for the interviewing managers to tell them the types of things and how they should discuss things as well. And they're taking part in the interviews as well.
Thank you.
Matt, can I add something?
Absolutely.
I've recently gone through the hiring process and am again hiring another candidate now, but Tanya, who's on with us, was interviewing right as COVID broke, as the remote work started, and was in the process of interviewing and having to flip our interviews over to video interviews. One of the things that's great or that we look for in a candidate is their flexibility. And, in this time, we've turned all of our interviewing and even training into video. So we've spent an awful lot of time on Zoom and WebEx and whatever works at the time, Teams, and it's a little bit different environment, but it shows the flexibility in people. If you're interviewing candidates and you have to flip over to a Zoom meeting instead of having them come in, and they do well with that, I think, that's a great aspect. So it has changed, definitely.
Sorry, Matt, I just wanted to let you know we have four more minutes in this room.
Thank you. Timekeeper, appreciate that. How about, just a question for either Scott or Mary, whoever wants to jump in on it first is, I'm going to take a question from the larger group that we didn't ask is, what are your thoughts about continuous learning? I mean, never stop, right? But do you have any personal preferences or personal motivation towards learning?
Mary, do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, teaching at Northeastern, it's like I'm very interested in that. And I think it is something, and it's a skill. Our industry is changing so much on so many levels so quickly that in order to stay relevant, you have to be continuously learning. And you have to learn about things that you may not be comfortable with, or that you may be hard for you, hard for you to comprehend, and you think that you're never going to use them again. But it's like genomics, does everybody think that they're going to have to know about genomics? Well, I would venture to say that in 5 years, we all have to know about genomics. And these are things that will keep you employable and keep you also, you'll be a better resource to the company that you're working with, gives you more job security. And I think you provide value to your organization as well. You prove that, you will provide value to your organization. Scott, you want to add anything there?
Yeah, when I think about this, Matt, I mean, this is like a linchpin question for this whole webinar.
Sorry.
People asking questions about wanting to grow, wanting to get promoted, wanting to whatever it is, right? Putting yourself in this position of learning something new. And I didn't think about what Mary just said about teaching. Boy, have I grown when I get put in the position of having to teach something to somebody, make a presentation. I remember doing, and probably Rich, maybe Mary was there, the public policy, New England HIMSS public policy thing back, I don't know when it was, might have been when high tech came out or whatever. And I was supposed to make this presentation to this room of like 300 people. And HIMSS was supposed to provide me with the slides. And like, it was a Monday conference or something. And Friday, John Glasser said to me, do you need to use these slides? And I said, well, no. And he said, good, because they're crap. And I spent the entire weekend researching and creating this presentation that, I actually think came out pretty well. But I was sweating. I was really, you put yourself in places where you have to learn, you're going to grow.
Great answer. That must have been a fun weekend.
Yeah, my wife wasn't happy.
Well, I guess we should probably wrap up. We're going to transition back into the larger room. I want to thank both Mary and Scott for your insights.
Yes, thank you so much.
Questions and participating on the panel. It's been great to have you both.
Thank you all.
All right, we're switching rooms. Thanks, Matt.
And thanks all for your other input too.
All right.